one.
Wednesday night edition of the Anaheim Calling Podcast. We are back to discuss a 3-1 Ducks victory over the Calgary Flames at Honda Center. A pretty exciting game in terms of some contributions from the prospects. Ryan Getzlaf scoring a nice goal. We're going to get into all of it. Jake, our on-site reporter, how was the atmosphere at Honda Center tonight?
It was interesting. It was fan appreciation night, so
do you feel appreciated?
I do feel kind of sort of appreciated. Let's go with that. I did not win anything. I didn't win a jersey off the back, but due to some issues with the Chick-fil-A app, I got 2 chicken sandwiches out of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's a major win. I don't know how you can't feel appreciated after that.
Also, real quick, give me 1 sec. They gave out posters, which I think actually is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no. So Jake has a conspiracy theory for those that can't see that.
It's not really a conspiracy.
It's a total conspiracy. That the fan appreciation poster featured 4 current Ducks players in the foreground, and then in the background, 4 former Ducks players, and 3 of them, Solani, Correa, and Niedermeyer, all have their jerseys retired. The 4th one, Jean-Sébastien Giguère, who does not have his jersey retired, who we have much speculated about on this pod as potentially being the next guy to go up. So, Jake, does this confirm your theory?
I mean, it neither confirms nor denies anything, but if you're going to put why would you not just put those 3 players on there? Then it's like, there's your 3 retired numbers. If you're putting a 4th person on there with those 3 players, and it's someone that is rumored or fans want his number retired, there's a lot of conclusions that can be drawn if you're putting him on the Mount Rushmore with those players.
Yeah, I mean, certainly something to monitor. I don't think it would be undeserved by any means if Giguère were to go up into the Raptors, but we've talked about that before.
We have.
There's plenty other things to talk about tonight, and I really want to get into this first and foremost. So Elliot Tieford today of the Orange County Register puts out an article mostly about Ryan Kesler's health status and how they're going to be reevaluating. There's a lot left to be determined in terms of his future. But really, that wasn't the biggest piece of news to come out of that. The biggest was that John Gibson, Bob Murray talked about how Gibson has suffered from not unhealthy weight loss, but lost a lot of weight down during the period where he started 19 games out of 21. And essentially, he got so far down low that they've really been careful about resting him the rest of the stretch here. And I just found that to be such an interesting little tidbit because, I mean, it's not something you hear about every day. Goalies, there's been goalies who have started a lot of games in the past, and for whatever reason, you just don't, it's not something you hear about. And I guess, I don't know, my first takeaway from it, I tweeted it out today, but to me, this just is kind of another black mark on the tenure that Randy Carlyle had.
Yep.
I mean, I understand that at that point the Ducks were kind of trying to save their season, and they just didn't want to start Chad Johnson, under any circumstance. But you have to at least consider the bigger picture to some degree. And starting a guy 19 games out of 21, especially a guy with injury history, I mean, it just doesn't seem smart. And we said just as much at the time. We kept saying that, this doesn't seem very wise, especially considering that the Ducks have made such a long-term investment in John Gibson. And, I mean, it sounds like he's going to be fine. I mean, this doesn't sound like anything career-threatening or anything like that, but it's just kind of another one of those just kind of have to shake your head when you read about it situations.
Yep. I mean, that's kind of my exact take on it also, is that it's just when you read the quote specifically and kind of Bob Murray saying, like, we ran him into the ground, And for God's sake, his weight's just getting back to where it is. And I think one thing that we should mention is that he did have his wisdom teeth pulled.
Right.
And that may play a factor in that. How much it does, I don't know.
But that was after the stretch of games.
Yes, that was after the stretch of games. So it really just kind of feels like Bob Murray kind of burying Randy Carlyle a little bit, which is interesting to me.
Right. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's weird in that sense. I just really don't. It definitely feels like he's kind of kicking him while he's down. It feels like Randy Carlyle just mismanaged this completely. It felt like he was trying to save his job and not. I mean, this is a couple different things that we talked about, that Randy Carlyle didn't have the long-term interest of his players kind of on the top of his mind. He was more worrying about saving his own job, which I get. But when we talk about Ryan Kesler, for instance, I think that there's a direct comparable that can be made to that in this situation that that basically he wasn't caring about the long-term outlook for that player. He was just caring about the short-term results. He wasn't caring about the long-term impact that this could have on John Gibson playing these games. He was just worried about trying to win those games. And in the process, it hurt John Gibson. Because let's say John Gibson doesn't have that stretch of 19 of 21 where he goes and he's just getting shelled in those games and doesn't perform like he had in the beginning of the season. If he maybe played, I don't know, 12 of those and played better in those 12, is he in the Vezina conversation?
I mean, I think he already is in terms of being nominated. But yeah, I mean, as far as his candidacy to win it, you have to imagine it's going to be stronger. But I mean, there's a few combination of factors here that you have to consider. I mean, yes, he did play a lot of games, but it's not just the amount of games he was playing. It's the workload he was getting in those games, facing that high amount of shots. You know, that latter half of Carlisle's tenure this season, it really was a period where the Ducks' defensive play took another insane drop, and they were not just one of the worst teams in the league defensively during that stretch. They were one of the worst teams we've seen in years. Yeah, just with some of the numbers they were putting up, and so that you have to consider. It's not just the amount of games played, but it's also the number, the amount of shots he was facing. Now, one thing I also do want to point out is that you have to wonder how much of this decision-making of starting him game in and game out, because obviously at what point does management step in and say, look, we know that you need him in there, but there is also this other thing to consider, aka the fact that we have a lot of money tied up in this guy. And plus, it just seems wise to give him a little more rest. So although Bob Murray didn't directly criticize Randy Carlyle, he was criticizing the decision-making at the time, or just the fact that he played that many games. So does he share the blame? I mean, I think he has to a little bit.
Yeah, he definitely does.
He is the guy making the call at the end of the day, and, he's got to be able to step in. So I don't think he meant to bury Randy Carlyle. I don't think it's solely on Randy Carlyle and I know that's kind of how I framed it initially. I still think he has a large part to blame here, but management also deserves some blame because, look, I mean, you are the ones who made the investment, and so you have to manage that investment. And I think that it's unfortunate. Again, it's not something that's gonna, hopefully affect him long term. Yeah. But it's just kind of one of those things that could have been avoided. And I feel like that's kind of the story of a lot of things that happened that went wrong for the Ducks this season. Okay, so we really started this off on a chipper note. Outside of that, not really any big news to report. Ryan Getzlaf and Nick Ritchie making their returns to the lineup tonight. Daniel Sprong on the top line next to those two. Looked good tonight. Not going to say that they were the Ducks' best line. That honor is going to go to Sam Steele, Jakob Silfverberg, and Rickard Rakell, who were all very good. Yep. Once again. So, I mean, should we just jump into the recap here? Yep. Anything else to add?
The only thing to add is that in turn with Getzlaf and Ritchie coming back into the lineup, Kiefer Sherwood and Chase DeLeo were sent down. And along with that, Devon Shore was shifted back to the wing.
Yes, and that is one thing that we should mention is the San Diego Gulls kind of, jockeying for position for the playoffs. Win a pretty big one tonight in San Jose. They were down to 11 forwards and had to dress 7 defensemen. mostly just due to lack of health and call-ups, and they managed to pull out a pretty big win. I believe it was an overtime win, 4-3. And so, I mean, good on them. Hopefully that they can extend that, and the Ducks can kind of feed some of their current youngsters back into that system, which would be a huge boost, obviously, for the goals.
Because once the Duck season ends on Friday, you can expect to see Sam Steele go down. You can expect to see Max Jones go down. You can expect to see Andy Welinski, Jacob Larson, Jacob Megna, although Megna would require waivers, but they did send him down on a paper transaction to make him AHL playoff eligible, so I would assume that would happen. He is the goals captain, if you remember. And actually, why don't I do a quick check right now? If whenever Drummondville is eliminated from playoff contention, Max Comtois.
You could see Max Comtois.
You could see Max Comtois end up with the San Diego Gulls. So let's see. I'm just kind of curious as I'm going along for what the QMJHL playoff situation is right now. And there we go. Drummondville already won their first round playoff. So
right. So probably unlikely that you see him at least within the next week or two, but maybe that could change moving forward. Either way, the Gulls are going to get a pretty big boost, and so it's going to be interesting. I hope that we get to see all of them get sent down, because that would be a fun little kind of subplot to follow. I think a silver lining in the Ducks season. So let's get into this recap, though. First goal of the game, Sam Steele on a one-timer. Not really how he's made his mark so far in the NHL. This was a really good shift by that line. Again, Silverberg, Rakell, 2 Swedes and a steal. Just controlling down low, getting shots on net, winning battles. And Silverberg curls out of that corner, the left corner, and then just feeds Sam Steele in the middle of the ice. I should mention, though, that the Calgary Flames, I believe, are resting some guys tonight. No Giordano in the lineup. And then as well, no Sam Bennett, although I think he's hurt. No TJ Brody, no Travis Hamonic, no Noah Hannafin, no Elias Lindholm, and no Sean Monahan. So this wasn't really the A team for the Calgary Flames, but they're still a very good team. It is something that we have to mention, though. Sam Steele, though, finishing off that feed with a really nice one-timer. Basically just kind of blasts it home. Sorry, that was a feed from Rakell. Just blasts it home past David Rittich. Why did I say Mike? I combined Mike Smith and David Rittich into one. I don't know what the hell that gives you.
One awful goalie.
Yes. So David Rittich, he of the .911 save percentage this season, gets beat there by a really nice finish by Sam Steele, who I thought was really good tonight. He's looked good, really, in the last few games that he's played. He's finishing the season on a really high note. But to me, the star of the night for the Ducks, it's not even a question. I know that Ryan Miller had a good game, but to me, it's Max Jones. He looked really impressive tonight. He's just kind of continuing on what we've seen from him. Just so crafty with the puck, so aggressive, too. He reminds me of Andre Kasha a little bit in that respect, where he's just kind of a bulldog with the puck, and all night long just creating opportunities for himself. Just before the halfway point in the first period, doing what he does best, controlling along that wall, controlling down low, and just shakes off his defender with one arm and then just spins back against the grain and fires it high short side on Rittich. Maybe a goal he shouldn't have allowed, but that was a perfect shot. To me, a highlight reel goal, maybe not the flashiest, but really hard play to pull off, and just a terrific goal by Max Jones there, 2-0 Anaheim at that point.
Yep. Real quick thing on the first goal by Sam Steele. I did want to make mention that line had a really good shift in the lead up to that goal. Sam Steele ended up getting the puck in the slot. And actually, I thought it was interesting. Instead of taking the shot, he actually looked for Rakell and got it to him, and Rakell just couldn't deflect it. And I thought that was the right play. And then eventually the puck ends up back at Steele. He fires it on net and finishes. So I think that overall was a great shift. And then on that goal, I'm curious for your take on this. Good shot or bad goaltending?
I would say that it's a combination of the two, as it is always, but I would say I would call it 65 to 70, 30 good shot. I think that, on that sequence, Rittich is making the play that most goalies will make, goes down into that reverse VH, sealing off the bottom of the ice. You don't really expect a guy to just spin back and roof it. I think that most goalies there are expecting a guy to just keep controlling it along the perimeter. And I think he could have probably played it a little better. I don't really understand why he was so crouched over. He should have probably remained more upright. But it was a really nice shot by Max Jones. I mean, I don't want to take too much away from it, because I think just to have the awareness to spin back like that and place it where he did, I don't know. It's just a really, really nice play.
Yep. And what was
anything else you want to add about Max Jones' night while we're at it here?
I think he was all over the place. I mean, the line that he was on with Carter Rowney and Derek Grant, as much as I've kind of maligned or kind of been negative about Derek Grant and his future with the team, that was the best Ducks line per expected goals for percentage on the night, posting a 96% expected goals for percentage at .58 expected goals for, only .02 against. So they were not on the ice for a whole lot of chances against. I mean, you look at shot attempt metrics. That line was on the ice for only 2 shot attempts against and 14 for. Only, let's see, 9 shots on goal for, 0 against. So they were on the ice for no shots on goal against. 10 scoring chances for, 1 against. 6 high danger chances for, none against. So that line was just very, very good on the night. Part of it probably could be due to some soft matchups, due to the Flames playing some not great talent. But then again, the Ducks, on the other hand, are in a similar spot, having to play some guys from the AHL on their team. And so I think that they were able to take advantage of it. And in their 8 minutes and 10 seconds of ice time tonight were very, 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 very good.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at that blue line for the Flames tonight. It's basically a phantom, a ghost ship of their regular unit. I mean, the pairings, Fantenberg, Anderson, although they are semi-regulars, Valimaki, Stone, and then how do you find his name? Shillington? I don't understand how that comes out to Shillington. I always look at it as Kylington and then Prout.
Oh, I always thought it was Killington.
They were saying Shillington on the broadcast, and I was very confused by it. But anyway, they're the professionals. I'm not, so I'm going to have to defer to them there. But yes, just overall, really a good night for that line. Statistically, probably the best, but I think on an eye test, to me, I'm still going to give it to Steele, Rakell, and Silverberg. They were just the most noticeable start to finish. Ritchie, Getzlaf, Sprong were also very good. I mean, statistically and eye test, I think Sprong, it still is a wonder why he's not a regular, why he doesn't get power play time. He didn't play on the power play tonight again. I mean, when he's using his legs, when he's really kind of using that speed of his, to me, he's a difference maker. And I think that hopefully he gets more of a look next season. So let's move on here. Just after that second goal, the Flames were able to reply. This went off a really nice feed from Johnny Gaudreau for his 98th point of the season, which is ridiculous. Gets it over to Derek Ryan, who then goes forehand, backhand. Not really a great back check from Corey Perry here, I've got to say. Just not really a great overall defensive effort from the Ducks. Probably wasn't their best defensive game, but playing the team that they were, it kind of didn't matter. Also, Miller played really well. And then early in that second period, Ryan Getzlaf with, probably the nicest goal I've seen him score in a long time. I mean, I can't really recall him actually not only making a move like this off the fly, but shockingly, he didn't pass it to anyone. I mean, he wasn't all alone in the offensive zone, but maybe you expect him to, I don't know, dump it along the wall or something like that. Instead, kind of pulls the old Corey Perry move, goes inside out, to kind of draw that defender in and then escape, and then just fires a wrist shot, a really good-looking wrist shot, far side on Rittich. This one, again, it's one of those like the Jones goal where maybe you can say bad goaltending, but I think that changing of the angle by Getzlaf, that pre-shot movement, as we like to call it nowadays, enough to fool almost any goalie there. That would put the Ducks up 3-1. And then after that, I mean, no scoring. That would be the final score. A good third period, I thought, from the Ducks. Max Jones drawing a penalty again, just kind of continuing that strong night of his. But overall, just a solid game for this Ducks team.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the...
Jake, why don't you sound that excited about this? Can you tell me why you don't sound that excited?
I don't sound that excited because with this win, the Ducks have actually passed another team in the Edmonton Oilers and jumped from 7th to now the 8th draft position. But I mean, they're most likely going to end up down in that 7th or 6th spot. So it's hurting their odds. And as the tank commander, that makes me gives me a big sad. So,
poor Jake.
But we look at the team. There are definitely some big positives to be taken away. I think I will throw it on the screen in one quick second once I get it up. But if you look at the heat map tonight on the night, it was a really good night from the team in terms of at least limiting shot attempts. The only downside for the night is the fact that the shot attempts that they did allow were kind of from dangerous areas. So there we go. I now have it up on the screen for all of you. And so you can see the heat map on the night. The Flames really didn't get a whole lot of shots, but like I said, you can see there's a big blue dot right in front. So they did have a lot, but the Ducks also did a really good job of getting chances from right in front of the net. You look at how big of a spot there is in front of the net where it's really dark red. That shows you that the Ducks really did a good job of getting those chances from in tight. And you look at the game flow chart, the Ducks were able to control play, get something going. I think there's a lot of positives that can be taken away from this game from Ducks perspective. I think if you're looking at it from a Flames perspective, it highlights how important their defense is of Giordano, Hannafin, and Brody.
For the Flames, this was a don't get injured game.
Yeah, basically. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the only real negative from tonight wouldn't be an Anaheim Calling podcast without me pointing out that Cam Fowler and Andy Welinski, by far the Ducks' worst pairing tonight. The Flames didn't get a whole lot of offense, but the majority of it seemed to occur when those two were out there. Again, I don't know what's wrong with that pairing. We've talked about this before on the podcast, but they just don't seem to work together. Fowler hasn't been that good since Randy Carlyle got fired. His on-ice stats are not really all that encouraging. So I don't know. I really don't know.
With Gooley, those numbers were better, though.
With Gooley, they were very good. But outside of that, they haven't been. So I don't know what that says about the entire situation.
I mean, this is kind of going.
Cam Fowler might be the hardest guy to evaluate in the league because he never does well when you think he should, and then when you expect him not to, then for some, like when he plays on the right side, his non-natural side, he seems to stand out. So we actually had a fun little debate in the Slack chat today for our staff about who's more likely to get traded, Adam Henrique or Cam Fowler this season. And I'm pretty sure this is a debate we've had on the pod.
Really quick, I do want to make mention of the fact that because we mentioned the other day about Andy Welinski, and it was after he had scored the goal and just the fact of how we protect him. I think tonight's a good example of kind of what he doesn't do well. He just doesn't get the puck out of the zone well. And I think that's reflected in his stats. That's reflected in a lot of different things that we see. That's reflected on an eye test level. And I think tonight's kind of a good example of that.
See, to me, I think it's the opposite. I think he's fine with that. It's just his play in zone doesn't allow him to get to that point. But we could be both kind of looking at the same thing.
Yep.
And making the same assessment, just looking at it differently. I don't know. So we had that debate of who's more likely to get traded, if either is to get traded, Henrique or Fowler this offseason. And I was kind of thinking about it, and I've been staunchly in the Henrique is more likely to get traded boat because Fowler is just intrinsically harder to move with his no trade clause. But also, I don't know. I was thinking about it, and if you look at the Ducks center depth, they don't really have much of any. I mean, after Getzlaf, it's basically Henrique, Steele, Kessler, Grant. And so, I mean, Kessler, you can almost write off as of right now until further notice. And then Sam Steele, I mean, you don't really expect him to make a huge leap next season. So if you remove Adam Henrique from that equation, I mean, that is a very thin group of centers. So I don't know. I mean, I guess you could almost say the same about the blue line, maybe to a smaller degree. But I don't know. Who do you, of those two, see as the most likely to get moved as the Ducks continue their retool?
I still think it's Adam Henrique.
Okay. Care to elaborate?
I think it's Adam Henrique because it all depends on how you view Devon Shore.
Right. And I guess Spencer Woods chiming in here in the chat, and Carter Rowney, who is a center, was signed as a center, but has barely played center.
And Isaac Lundestrom.
Yeah, but Isaac Lundstrom's probably not going to play in the NHL next season.
Who knows? It's possible.
Oh my God. Okay, so you don't think you think Adam Henrique is less likely to be traded because Isaac Lundestrom, who might play in the NHL next season? I need something a little bit more than that. I mean, you don't have to make the depth argument. You can just say he's easier to trade, which I think is still totally valid.
Well, I think moving that contract out makes sense. Sorry, the reason why I've kind of been stalling a little bit is I'm trying to get up onto the screen. I'm messing with Cap Friendly right now, and as we speak. to essentially set up what the Ducks roster is right now going into next season and kind of be able to show everyone what it is. So making the assumption, because I think it's a pretty safe assumption with everything that's going on, that Patrick Eves is going on LTIR. Ryan Kesler is also going on LTIR. This leaves, and then I think it's also a safe assumption to say that Max Comtois will be on the Ducks next season.
Ooh, you're going there.
I think that's a safe assumption. So here's your 12 forwards are kind of set with, you have Getzlaf, Perry, Shore, Henrique, Silverberg, Ritchie, Jones, Rakell, Kasha, Steele, Rowney, Sprong, Comtois, Terry. There's your 14 forwards. Then on defense, you essentially have 5 NHL defensemen, or 5 NHL defensemen right now in Fowler, Manson, Lindholm, Larson, Gooley, and then 1 NHL goalie in Gibson. So, and that leaves the Ducks with 3 spots left, and they have, if the salary cap goes up to $83 million, they're left with, what would that be, $16 million? Because they're at 67.3 per this. So, yeah, they're left with $15.7 million.
The Ducks still with no right-shooting defenseman outside of Josh Manson signed for next season.
So, maybe...
The Ducks will be a test case for, do you really need the lefty-righty combination?
Well, maybe that's where the Adam Henrique for PK Subban trade comes in.
I mean, the Adam Henrique for insert NHL right-handed shot at this point. Okay, well, fair enough. I mean, I think that...
So, I think if you look...
go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, if you look at this depth chart a little bit, I know it's listing Rakell as a center. I can shift that around.
It's just a group of forwards.
Yeah. So, but you can have Devon Shore swap for Adam Henrique, and we saw Devon Shore have that chemistry with Jakob Silverberg. And
also Sam Steele is listed as a winger here.
Also, yeah, exactly. So, you can have Sam Steele center in. So you have Getzlaf, you have Steele, you have Shore, you have Rowney. And then you have potentially whoever they draft, if that person comes out of camp and makes the team, whether that be the Ducks winning the lottery of some sort and getting a Dylan Cousins, getting a Jack Hughes, and they make the team right away, or it's a more long-term project.
I mean, right now, here's my question to you. You know, I'm looking at the list that you've compiled, and I'm going to be very clear. This is your list. It's not necessarily what could happen or what will happen.
It's just me throwing in the guys that are under contract.
Do you think Jones, Steele, Terry, Comtois all start the season next year on the Ducks?
I think so.
All of them? Not even one in the AHL?
I really doubt that, honestly.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I mean, I'm just trying to think about it in my own head here. The only reason I could see one of them not being in the lineup, I mean, especially the wingers, you know, there's just a lot of guys who are wingers on this team.
I agree.
That could be the only, I mean, again, I'm not saying they don't deserve it, especially the way they played down the stretch here. And by the way, this is, I guess, my closing thought before we jump into questions. It is a little late here, so we're trying to move this thing along. One thing I did want to talk to you about is, you know, Brian Hayward was talking about this after the game, you know, about the decision to bring in the young guys and actually play them in the NHL the entire way through to end the season. And now we can look back on that, because at the time where Randy Carlyle was fired, I was staunchly, you know, it's best to leave them down there, let them season, let them marinate in the AHL, and let them really make that push playing key roles. But I have to say, I'm going to eat some crow here. I think that it's worked out really nicely. They've all, almost to a man, have exceeded expectations.
Yeah.
They've played really well. I think that they're going to benefit a lot from this. And again, this is about at the end of the day, and this sucks for some of our Gulls fan listeners, but these systems are made to supplement and enhance the big club, you know, and so that's going to come at a cost. But I think that in the reverse, once the Ducks season ends on Friday, the Gulls are also going to get some really good players back, some improved players. So I thought it was a good point by Hayward. But what do you think about it, and kind of in hindsight now?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I think for the Ducks' chances at getting better in the draft lottery, it hasn't been helpful.
Wouldn't you think though that, you know, just kind of looking at it without knowing what's going to happen, that bringing in a bunch of inexperienced kids would be good for your lottery odds?
Yeah. Well, and I think here's the thing.
It's because they traded Brandon Montour. That's
100%. It's funny because for a long time I've been the proponent of calling them up and getting them playing and getting them minutes because you want to play the best players available. And it was really after the trade going into the trade deadline that I kind of had switched that stance simply to kind of get them with the goals, get them in the stretch run for the playoffs. And it's funny because I was always the one that kind of was saying call them up, give them the chance, and I was always the one being told by a lot of various people that no, keep them down with the goals.
Right.
Keep them down there. Let them get the time there. And it's weird that finally got to me, but I think we saw the benefit here of giving the guys the time in the NHL.
Shockingly, playing NHL hockey is good for becoming a better NHL player.
Well, and I think it's also the fact of giving them the minutes. I guess not when it... I don't think when it doesn't matter is the right way to put it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no pressure. I mean, there is pressure within the organization for them to show out, but there's no pressure in terms of, the 2 points on the line.
And I think that also, to Murray's credit, I think he probably was approaching the kids the correct way. We heard it in his comments with the way that he was kind of, critical of the current generation in a way about yelling at them and you can't do that. But I think as much as that was kind of like...
But it also goes to show he understands them.
Yes. As much as that kind of was a shot, that was also kind of him recognizing how you need to coach them. And so I think that that's good. And I think the only downside to it is the fact that Troy Terry got hurt and now he's not going to be available for the goals playoffs unless they go on a deep run.
Yeah, actually, that is probably the last thing we should mention here. Troy Terry, I believe, out up to 3 months with a broken tibia. And so... that's obviously a pretty big setback. Am I getting that right? 3 months? I think it's 8 to 10 weeks is the time frame that we were given.
I thought 6 to 8 weeks is what I saw.
6 to 8? Okay. Well then, okay. So I'm getting it now up to 3 months with a broken leg. And so, I mean, I think it should be fine. It kind of stinks because it's in a pretty big summer for him, but we'll see. And then I guess the last thing here, that I wanted to mention about the whole youth movement is that my big opposition to it was just the stink around this team. I mean, just the fact that things were so bad, that things were just so dire. But like Brian Hayward mentioned on the broadcast, it was something that kind of changed the attitude, changed the atmosphere.
It is 8 to 12 weeks, by the way.
8 to 12. Okay. Great. Well, then let's get into some questions before we get on out of here.
All right. So people in the Twitch chat, start throwing your questions in. I know I saw Tony's yours earlier. If you can just repost it so it's easier for me to find it and to look at it. Any other questions that have been put in there, just copy them, post them. Again, I'm not going to delete it for spamming. It just makes my life a little bit easier finding them. But for those of you listening to the recorded version of this on your favorite podcast app, whether that be the Apple Podcast, whether that be SoundCloud, whether that be Stitcher, or watching the recorded version of this show on YouTube, you can also find us, if you're not watching this on YouTube, if you search Anaheim Calling SB Nation, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, you can see everything that we do here on the video portion of the stream, showing different things. But we do a Twitch stream of this show at twitch.tv/Anaheim Calling SBN, where you can interact with us live in the chat and ask us questions in there. And you can also help support the show. If you have Amazon Prime, you do get Twitch Prime. You get 1 free month, and with that, you can subscribe to any channel that you want. And if you do want to support us in a way that's completely free to you, link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then you hit that subscribe button above Felix's head, somewhere above there. You hit that subscribe button after every 30 days, and it's a way to help support this show in a way free to you. With that, you get special emotes in the chat, special badge next to your name, and we will, if we're blitzed with a lot of questions, we will prioritize the questions from Twitch Prime members.
I think we have a couple in Twitter.
We do. Let's hit the Twitch questions first, then we'll go to the Twitter questions. So Animeholics D94 asks, has anyone else besides me felt really frustrated the last month to wake up in the morning and see the team actively hurting their draft odds game after game? It has made me wish we kept Randy Carlyle, and it's bad when I'm even thinking about that. I think this is an interesting question, or more just kind of statement, because I feel like there's some merit there. That it's frustrating.
Make the case, Jake. Make the case.
Make the case in the sense of, I'm not making the case for keeping Carlisle because, God, he was an awful coach. Yeah, that would
be a weird one coming from you.
That he's an awful coach, and I don't think I can even take it that far. But it is frustrating. I think it's frustrating because it's hurting the long-term health of this franchise. Having said that, you can take some positives away, but I would rather have seen them.
Well, hold on. So what was the solution to just tank the rest of the way? I mean, what would it have been?
I think the best case scenario would be if Chad Johnson was healthy, play Chad Johnson every game.
Okay, but realistically, teams aren't going to do that.
No.
Right? So, I mean, my whole thing is that I understand the argument, and I think that, yes, if this is like black and white, of course you want to lose out, maximize your chances,
yes,
and have the top pick. But at the same time, and again, the reward is so high if you get that top pick. I'm not even debating the merits of that. I want to be very clear there. But I also want to say that at the end of the day, we all knew, even people who were very skeptical like myself during the Ducks struggles, that they were not that bad.
Yeah.
They were not a lose 13, 15, whatever the losing streaks were in a row, bad team. So there was going to be some regression to the mean at some point. And, under better coaching and, bringing up the kids, I mean, it just kind of flipped that way. I mean, to me, if you want to talk about long-term health of this franchise, sure, losing out would have been optimal. But if you lose out, A, it's hard to do that. And then B, what does that say about the guys you currently have? You need your current roster to show you something as well. And so I think, yes, it's not satisfying that they didn't get a top pick. They may still. I mean, there's still a chance.
There's still a chance.
I mean, I don't want to talk about this like it's a fait accompli, but what I do want to say is that I think that if you want to talk long-term health, there are still benefits to be drawn here because the Ducks, their youngsters playing well, some of the veterans playing well, that is good for the long-term health of this franchise. So I don't think that they jeopardized the future by not pulling the plug completely on the season.
Yeah, I think really the only realistic options that they had for the quote-unquote tank in terms of from a management perspective would have been, let's say, shutting down Ryan Getzlaf tonight, saying, hey, just shut it down for the season.
Sure.
You're hurt. Don't worry about fighting through it. There's 2 games left. Then again, fan appreciation night. He is the captain. If he's ready to go, that is one thing. The other thing is moving guys on the expiring contracts, like we said, trying to push harder to maybe do the Jakob Silfverberg deal and then sign him in the offseason, that whole thing. That is no, but actually, where would the Ducks be if they didn't have Jakob Silfverberg right now? Think about the goals he scored.
Well, look, so here's the thing. I mean, I think that what we learned
By the way, sorry, Tony.
What we learned about this team's evaluation of itself, aka what Bob Murray thinks of the roster, is I don't think he saw this as a situation that it was just so rotten that he had to throw it out. That it was just, you've got to move everyone away. And, some people may view it that way, that they should have cleared out everyone that wasn't, part of the long-term picture, that wasn't a prospect, and just go full rebuild. But clearly, Bob Murray believes that this team can still be competitive, and that if you have some progress from the youngsters and you inject another top guy, through the draft, and obviously there's still going to be some tweaking in the offseason, that this team can still compete. It still does have John Gibson in net, and that is a very big trump card. So I don't know. Although the Ducks could have torn it down this season, I think it also runs counter to the people who say, well, this team is still that pretty good, but then you also want to tear it down, because if you tear it down, you're not going to be good for a while. You look at teams who tear it down, and it can take years to get back. Yeah.
And
if you do it the right way. Tearing it down is the easy part, folks.
Well, I don't think trading Silfverberg and even re-signing him in the offseason is kind of tearing it down. I think that that would have been a savvy move to move a guy. And like I said, where would this team be if they didn't have Jakob Silfverberg? Would they have lost some of the games that they won? I think so, because Silfverberg's been so good down the stretch for the team.
Right.
Right. So
I mean, to me,
that's the most realistic option.
That is the argument, is that it doesn't have to be one or the other. That they could have done a bit more in that direction. I think that that's probably what they thought they were doing by trading a guy like Brandon Montour and getting Brendan Gooley in return, a very unproven guy at the NHL level. But it turns out that Brendan Gooley might be better than Brandon Montour. So I shouldn't be so critical, because Brandon Montour has actually been pretty good. Since going to the Sabres, his underlying numbers
Buffalo
have actually been...
is tanking.
Yeah, but his if you look at his shot metrics, they've actually been really good on Buffalo. So anyway, that's that. I don't even know what we're answering anymore.
So let's get into this question. Question that's came from Tony Kempafu in the Twitch chat said, now that the season is over, in one game, and there's one game left, should the Ducks try to win the last game against the Kings, seeing how there's no way we can get bottom 3 at this point?
I mean, yeah, why not?
No.
I mean, there's no real end game anymore.
I mean, the end game is still you better your draft odds.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, the Kings are so bad, they would have to scratch a lot of guys to ensure a loss.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that the Ducks could lose to the Kings. They've lost a lot.
Well, yeah, they might lose the game, not because they tried to lose it, but because they just lost a hockey game.
That's should the Ducks try to win? I mean, obviously the Ducks are going to try to win. I'm just saying what I would like to see. Let's go with that.
Well, we know what you would like to see, Jake.
As the tank commander.
It's literally been recorded for the last 8 months.
Yeah, I threw it out a long time ago, putting on the disguise of rooting for the team or wanting them to win. That disguise went away long ago.
We appreciate your honesty.
It went away a long time ago. All right, so there was another question in the Twitch chat. I'm trying to find it really quickly. Oh, Coldfire725 says, who do you think is primed to be upset during the playoffs?
I mean, we had a fun little back and forth about this on Twitter during tonight's game. I mean, okay, let's go, because the obvious candidates are obviously going to be the Flames and the Sharks, right? I think we can all agree on that. But yeah, I think it's Nashville or Winnipeg. I think that they're kind of both prime. I'm going to go with Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg is maybe the most likely to be upset. It might not. I mean, it could happen in the first round because let's see here. Dallas has clinched a playoff spot, and they're going to be right now. They would be facing Winnipeg in the first round. And, you know, Dallas isn't this kind of stalwart team, but they have really good goaltending. They have the top end talent. And the Winnipeg Jets have been abysmal at 5-on-5 for the last 3 months or so. So I could see maybe the Stars pulling that one out in 7 in the first round. It's not likely, but to me, my most likely to be upset is Winnipeg. Because to me, I think that would be seen as more of an upset than, say, Vegas beating San Jose.
Is St. Louis beating Nashville considered an upset, though?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know
at this point.
I think it would be in most people's eyes because Nashville is still kind of that darling franchise.
And the Blues were kind of out of it and had to make this run.
The Blues had the worst record on January 1st.
Yeah.
and now they might advance to the second round.
They could win the cup.
They might. Well, yeah. But so, yeah, to me, my upset pick would be, if I was a gambling man, my upset pick would be Dallas over Winnipeg in the first round. Again, just because I don't see St. Louis and Nashville as much of an upset. I think St. Louis is probably the better team right now. But, for example, Colorado-Calgary, which seems to be the mostly likely round 1 matchup, I would say that even though, you know, Calgary's goaltending issues linger, I can't see Colorado beating them. I mean, they have 88 points in 80 games. I mean, this team is going to somehow get into the playoffs by the skin of its teeth. You will recall that they were, I believe, first in the division for a little bit there in the beginning of the season, or at least they were playing really well. So I don't know. I mean, can you see that one happening?
Sorry, say that again.
Your Avalanche against Calgary in round 1. Is there any upset potential there?
No.
Really?
No.
So you're just fully off that bit. It's never going to happen again.
The Lance bit was last season.
I know.
That was.
Where's the year-to-year consistency?
There isn't. Bits only go year to year. They don't have to continue.
By the way, Minnesota will miss the playoffs, and I believe Bruce Boudreau had guaranteed they were making it. So sorry, Bruce.
Yep. Oh, we have those questions from Twitter. Mm-hmm. You have them up, or you need me?
Sure. I don't know if I have all of them, but I do have one. Where there's 2?
Yes.
Okay, there was the one from Kristen.
And then there's one from Scott that came to me, I guess.
Only. Oh, well, then there's 3. So I'm going to start this one from Manuel. Hypothetical. If Ducks win the first place lottery draft and Canucks win the 3rd place, so basically if the Ducks get the first pick and Canucks get the 3rd, should the Ducks trade, swap picks, an additional first-round pick. Theirs and not protected, a second-round and/or prospects. So basically, if they got the first, would you try swapping with another team to add more prospects to your system, or do you just take the top pick?
Take the top pick.
So no argument for you can get a great player number 3. You can also add more prospects to your system.
Nope, none.
I mean, if you can get a Jack Hughes or a Capo Caco, you just kind of have to do it. And I mean, that's one of those decisions that shouldn't keep you up at night.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I believe Kristen had asked, if the Ducks played better and faster, could they be like the Jets? Well, I don't know if you want to be like the Jets right now, but I get where you're coming from. I like the Jets because they play a heavy game but are also skilled. We know the Ducks won't abandon grit, so maybe they can't emulate the Jets. It's more of a train of thought than a question. I mean, I think that the Jets model is obviously one that teams around the league, and I guess Predators model you can also add into there, is one that teams around the league have understood and are now looking to duplicate. The idea is that you have 4 skilled lines, but you still maintain some of that physicality. And to me, a guy like Max Jones, even a Nick Ritchie to a degree, took another bad penalty tonight. They kind of embody that idea where it's guys who, they're going to be physical, they're going to be chippy, but they can still play. And I think that the Ducks are kind of following that league-wide trend. I mean, you look at the guys who, and Max Comtois is actually another pretty good example of this because he's also a guy with a bit of a temper. And so I think that, if you look at the guys that are going to be coming in, they're pretty much all skilled guys. The Ducks aren't bringing in any brutes into their lineup through their farm team. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the Ducks kind of are going to be building in that mold. And I think that that's a look towards what the NHL is going to with building it out with 4 full lines. And like you said, they are going to have some physical players, but I think that this is going to be a little bit of a different Ducks team, though. It's not going to be in the exact mold of the Jets. They're going to have some skilled players. Sam Steele does not play that physical type of game. Troy Terry does not either. Andre Kasha doesn't really either. And so it's going to be a little bit different, maybe kind of sort of like the Jets, but I don't know if this is going to be as physical of a Ducks team as the as the Ducks, kind of the big bag Ducks of the past decade.
And also the Jets, it's a product of their centers. Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele are kind of what people associate their style with. But there's also guys like Nikolai Ehlers and Kyle Connor who are definitely not the biggest guys, but just play a good kind of speed game.
Yeah. Right. Let's hit this.
I think you had the third question. Yes.
Yeah, this came from our good buddy Ketchel Scott. That have the Ducks signed any senior college players yet? I have not seen anything on that.
Nothing.
And so let's end with this question, because this is an interesting one that we've argued about a little bit here and there. From Lewis, what percentage do you put on Gibson winning the Vezina?
0.
5% chance.
0.
Should he be a finalist?
I think he should be, because he was just so good in the beginning of the season. But I think that if I'm to predict if he's going to win, I'm going to put 0% chance. And again, it's not because he's 0% deserving. I just think that the way that voters go about these things,
the general managers, I
think they really value team success.
Wins.
And I mean, there's been some really good candidates, though. I mean, to be fair, Ben Bishop has been really good.
Ben Bishop has been very, very good.
He's probably been the second best goalie in the league this year. And if you look at the Dallas Stars, they're not really controlling play. And so I think that Ben Bishop has been a huge kind of boost to his team. And I think you factor in that they're going to make the playoffs. He, to me, seems like a logical finalist. Of course, there's the natural picks like Andrei Vasilevsky. You can argue if he's actually been the best goalie in the NHL this year, but he's probably going to get up there. And then, of course, the two-headed monster with the Islanders, Leonard and
but Bryce. I think they're gonna actually split the votes.
Yeah, I don't see either of them. I mean, I don't know.
I don't see it.
I mean, I don't see it just because voters like to reward that kind of workhorse starter.
Yeah. One general manager might pick one, another one might pick the other.
There was a lot of Freddie Anderson buzz for a while.
I think that's fallen off a bit.
Maybe with the way the Leafs have kind of sputtered to the finish line here. The Leafs have 99 points. The Canadians only have 5 less points than the Leafs.
Yeah, well, I think kind of where this conversation I think this conversation needs to go to isn't necessarily of is he going to win, because I think realistically he's not. He's not, because general managers don't value the stats that he's good in. They look at wins, they look at goals against average, they look at save percentage, which Gibson has kind of fallen back into.
Which is still like a real stat.
Yeah, save percentage is.
I mean, it's not like we can't just write that off.
No. I think Gibson. I think you definitely do look at save percentage still. I think GAA and wins are not the best things to be looking at in the world.
Although I think that goals against average is like 80 or 70% correlated with save percentage. So usually good goals against average means good save percentage. Usually.
Yeah.
John Gibson's actually probably kind of an interesting disparity there, where his goals against average is never that great, because especially early on in the season,
shot volume.
Because there's just so many shots.
Shot volume. Yeah. But that's the thing is, like, if you're gonna look at, if they're correlated, why are you looking at GAA? Look at save percentage.
But the point is that you can't call a stat useless if it can get you to the right answer.
But the whole point of when we're talking about different
stats,
there are
better stats. Yes.
Is if you're looking at a stat to tell you a specific story, if there's a stat that does that in a similar way but better, use it's a similar conversation of plus minus versus 5-on-5 goals for percentage.
Oh, and I agree. By the way, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
For the sake of fairness.
Yeah. And so I think by all those stats, Gibson's not going to win. But I think the other conversation to be had from this is, should he win? Because as of the definition of the Vezina is the best goalie in the league, right? Who's been the best goalie in the league? Not who's been the most important to their team's success. It's simple. Who's been the best goalie in the league? And I think the argument can be made, and it's probably the right argument, that Gibson has been the best. And yes, he had a bad stretch in the middle. You look at, and we had this whole argument about goals saved above expected. So in terms of the shot quality against, based upon where shots were, not just the volume that Gibson was facing, but also the quality of those chances that he was facing. Because let's be real, the chances that the Ducks were giving up were insane. The amount of expected goals that they were allowing to come against are insane. And the fact that Gibson was able to stop as many shots as he did was, I mean, it was otherworldly how good he was. And that's reflected when you look at goals saved above expected. On Corsica, that is that's GSAA. On other sites, that's GSAX. It's essentially saying that how many goals has he saved above an average goaltender put in that same situation, facing that same quality of shot. And Gibson still leads the league in that. One thing I do want to make mention is, be very careful with what site you're looking at for GSAA. Certain sites do it differently, as we learned, right, Felix?
I don't want to comment.
Essentially,
my comments are too snarky, so I'm just going to say
way too snarky. But basically, Hockey Reference, Natural Stat Trick, the way they define goal saved above average is essentially they're taking the league average save percentage, finding the difference between that and that goaltender save percentage and multiplying by shots to just simply do based upon league average save percentage. GSAA on Corsica makes an adjustment based upon shot quality against and adjust for if an average goaltender was facing those same quality of chances. Evolving Hockey has a GSAA, which is similar to Hockey Reference and Natural Stat Trick, and they also have a GSAX, which is similar to GSAA on Corsica. GSAX is probably the best way to put it, goal saved above expected.
Yeah, I mean, he's been very good in that, and obviously I think that there's no taking away from what he did. For Gibson, you know, it's so interesting because it's like, what do you want to look at more? You know, the second half of the season, he had a .917 save percentage at 5-on-5, which is actually still fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not terrible by any means, but when you compare it to what he was doing early on, then you start asking, well, you know, did the workload get to him or whatever the case may be? So I don't know. I mean, I think that all in all, to me, he should be a finalist. I think that that's kind of pretty easily defined. I mean, he had a .937 in the first, you know, from October 1st to January 1st, he had a .937. And then January 1st to now, he had a .917. This is all at 5-on-5. So I don't know. I mean, to me, he's a finalist. I just, for whatever reason, maybe I'm an NHL GM at heart, I just don't feel comfortable having him as the winner. It's just hard to have him in there for a team that's going to be last.
Who's been better over the course of the year?
Again, I'm not. Well, that's the thing is we haven't also followed these other guys'
that's
seasons
a fair
as
point.
closely. I mean, we've been so exposed to John Gibson, obviously. And I mean, again, you don't even have to be exposed to John Gibson to know how great he's been and to make the argument that he deserves to be up there.
And that's the thing, is that it's not only what we've seen, but the fact that that there are different guys within the stats community, whether it is Evolving Hockey, whether it is Micah McCurdy from Hockey Viz, whether it is who else? I think Sean Tierney also made the point. I think
John Gibson is the best goalie in the NHL right now.
Yeah, and I think that
if I were to write up my top 10, I think he's the best goalie in the NHL right now. I mean, it is crazy. First half, he had a 13.8 GSAA.
Yeah.
I know that we don't count that stat anymore, but
it depends on where you're getting it from.
Depends on if it's favoring John Gibson or not. But he was first in the NHL.
Wait. Really quickly. No, I do want to backtrack on this. GSAA, in the way that Natural Stat Trick and Hockey references, all it's telling you is the same exact thing of looking at save percentage.
Yeah, but I mean, it is. I mean, I don't know. It's just there's been this weird flip and its value all of a sudden.
No,
he's a negative GSAA in the second half.
It's not a weird flip in value. It's not a weird flip in value at all. What it is that it is certain sites evaluating the stat in a different way as to what it was meant to be evaluated as in the original way it was defined by Corsica. The original way it was defined by Corsica was saying, here's the amount of goals this person has saved above an average goaltender facing those same amount of shots and that same exact shot quality.
That's the delta save percentage.
No, but that's what GSAA is. GSAA is that. GSAA is delta save percentage times that, and that's based upon expected goals and that different type of stuff.
Well, to say GSA is just save percentage isn't totally accurate either, though.
I mean, it is, though, when you're looking, because all it is taking average save percentage, league average, not in terms of...
But it's basically like a standard deviation, if you want to think of it that way.
Sure, and so you're looking
at... It's how much better are you than the average?
And so it's comparing...
So how is that useless?
It's comparing a save percentage to an average goaltender, or to the average save percentage. So just look at that then. The thing that GSAA was nice to look at is it qualified it for shot quality against. It was the very first.
Yes.
And the thing is, GSAA, like you're looking at it now from Natural Stat Trick, does not do anything to qualify it for shot quality against.
Okay, but even still, I mean, John Gibson was still leading the league in the first half. I mean,
that's fine, and his save percentage was leading the league also, so it told you the same exact thing.
Right, but the thing is, the GSAA lets you know how much better he is than the league average. He also wasn't leading the league in save percentage, but the point is, to me, is that he, again...
So it accounts for shot. It accounts for shot volume then, shot volume and save percentage.
I mean, it's not a useless stat. I think that's too far. That's one step too far.
But it doesn't tell you the thing is, I think it's now misleading because people are interpreting...
How is it misleading? He was leading the league, and it showed how much better he was than the average.
I think it's misleading because people are assuming it means the same thing as what Corsica is showing it to mean. People are assuming...
well, that's different.
I think people, when they say GSAA, they assume what they're talking about, where they're pulling it from, as being adjusting for shot quality against.
Okay, well, that's different. That's a completely different argument, but I understand where you're coming from, that we have better stats to kind of account for the context that a goalie's facing. So again, John Gibson really shines in these stats because he was in a shitty context for pretty much the entire season, and he blew that out of the water. And so again, that's to me why he should be a finalist on that basis alone. Should that win him the award, because he was on such a bad team and he outperformed it for the majority of the season? We'll call it half or three-quarters of the season. I don't know about that, but I'm still very comfortable putting him in the finalists.
I think that needs to be taken into consideration when you think about it, because the fact that he kept
it's like the MVP conversation. I feel like this is a kind of a similar. Is a guy? Do you reward a guy for being the best player on a bad team that elevated them, or do you reward like the best player on the best team?
Yeah.
I think that this is kind of in that vein, although here we actually have something to quantify that.
Yep.
So again, if you were to give John Gibson the Vezina, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I just myself couldn't do it. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But if you were to go ahead and do it, if he were to win it this season, I wouldn't just come out howling and say this is the wrong pick. I guess that's where I fall on it. Is it just like, can I go that far? Maybe not. But I would be fine with someone else doing it for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We should probably wrap this thing up because this was supposed to be short, and now we're almost at an hour.
This was supposed to be short, but then we started arguing about stats.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, Ken Pafu, Tony in the Twitch chat said, I don't like when mom and dad fight.
All right, guys. Well, anyway, thank you so much for listening. Jake went over the spiel for Twitch. I'm not going to go over too much here, but basically twitch.tv/Anaheim Calling SBN. Join the fun after games. Become a subscriber. You can do that for free if you have an Amazon Prime membership. Go ahead and take advantage of that. Also, make sure to check out our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/ACPod. For $5 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes, and we might be tweaking with some of the benefits over the summer in light of the fact that we won't be doing a podcast every other day almost.
Yep. And if if you are a patron and what you want to see with how we do the Patreon, any suggestions, anything you want to see added, that is also why in our Discord chat there is the patron suggestion. It's not just for topics, it's also for things that you would like to see done with the Patreon. So if you have any ideas, anything like that ever, just throw it in that Discord chat.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we have now expanded to YouTube. So just search Anaheim Calling on YouTube. Comment, like, subscribe, whatever the YouTube spiel is, I guess, now that we're YouTubers. And then, of course, the bread and butter. Make sure to check us out on the Apple Podcast app. Leave a rating and a review. Try to get a rating and a review in by the time the season ends. It ends Friday. And, this was a tough season for the Anaheim Calling podcast. It was a really good one in terms of, consistency, getting the pods out there, or listenership, that type of thing. But it was tough. There were a lot of losses, a lot of games where, maybe there wasn't a whole lot to say, and we got through it. And so we really want to hear from you, how we did. It would really mean a lot to us, and it helps the show. So that's Apple Podcasts. Just search Anaheim Calling. But to listen to the show, you don't have to be in the Apple ecosystem, as the Appleites like to call it. You can find us on Stitcher. You can also find us on SoundCloud. So just search Anaheim Calling there, and we will pop up. And, of course, check out AnaheimCalling.com. That's at Anaheim Calling on Twitter. You can find Jake on social media if you want to follow his rantings and ravings. That's at Reindeer Games 91.
You can see me talk about Tottenham Hotspur on there all summer. Well, no, the season
you can get free Angels and EPL content
and some LAFC free content. By the way,
just every random sport in the world put into one.
Tottenham's new stadium opened today with a thrilling 2-0 win against Crystal Palace. Christened the new stadium well with that win. Ooh, it was beautiful.
Are we gonna do our segment of other sports segment?
I think we should wrap this thing up. We're over
Angels
an hour now.
Angels home opener Thursday night. I should mention
tomorrow.
Giants
tonight, if you're listening to this.
Also, screw the Dodgers. Okay, that's gonna do it for us.
Chad's gonna come
guys.
after you for saying that.
That's fine. Oh, also, I'm on Twitter at Felix_Sicard. That'll do it for us tonight, guys. Thanks a lot for listening along. We are just one podcast away from being done with the season podcast. So I'm going to save the sentimental talk for then. We will talk to you Friday night.
Goodbye.